Alrighty, and we are back for season 2 of Monday Morning Manager, and boy, have I lucked out with my first guest, the official face reveal of Philcaso. First off, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to see you.
It's great to be here. I'm so glad you had me on. I'm really excited to get into it.
Awesome. I mean, look, we had messaged probably about like last week. There was some stuff going on. Hey, new season starting up. We think we knew what the squad looked like. We think we knew what to expect going into Wolves. Since that message, there's been a ton of news around Savinho, and then literally this morning woke up to just all of the news around Donnarumma. There'd been like a few kind of rumblings. So honestly, we'd kind of had to throw the outline out of the window. First thing, I just want to hear your thoughts on Donnarumma, your thoughts of him on a player, and your reaction to this news.
Honestly, I really like Donnarumma. I know this is not a very popular opinion right now, given the reaction that I've seen. I've seen fire and brimstone reaction on the timeline and all of that. But he's the type of keeper that I really think wins you big games. Courtois type, really huge, massive presence in the box, willing to claim anything in the box. I haven't taken a look at all his statistics in depth, so I couldn't tell you if his claim stats are really as good as the eye test says they would be to me. But also just watching him in the Champions League last year against Arsenal, against Liverpool, he really made a huge difference, and he really made a lot of saves that I think really kept PSG in the competition and allowed their attacking players to be as fluid as they were in their system to work to the degree that it did that everybody now envies and is trying to replicate. So I think that he's a really good keeper for that for the big matches. And also I saw this morning that some people were saying that uh, he has some bad save statistics, but statistics with goalkeepers are so wishy-washy. It's so system specific. I just really think that you have to rely on what you see with him. So I would be really happy with him. I think that there are some weird fits with Trafford. I don't know why we would bring in another keeper that is given the number one and is brought in with the I don't know, the media rollout that he was, that he's going to be this future keeper for us and everything like that, just to sign another long term keeper. But we'll have to see with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically in the regards to the rollout, I'd have to imagine they were not expecting, maybe they were, which is even weirder if they truly were expecting this kind of thing to come out. Because there had been rumblings that Donnarumma wasn't happy. There had been rumblings that Donnarumma wanted out. And Trafford definitely was brought in as like a, hey, he's not the number one right now, but this is what he's going to be. That was kind of what they were letting the media frenzy around that signing kind of look like. And then all of a sudden now this other keeper comes around, and it's kind of the confusing part of it. When you look on FB one of the first players, because they do the whole like comparisons, funny enough, is Ortega. Now it's just from a stats and underlying standpoint. I think they are not quite the same type of keeper. For me, it is really is, I think, a parallel opposite to Ederson in a lot of ways. I do not think he's particularly good at all with the ball at his feet. I think any keeper is not going to be as good as Ederson with the ball at their feet, but I think he is particularly is just that's not what he is even remotely close to good at. But I think he is arguably the best, if not one of the best shot stoppers in the world. I love Ederson. It's just not what he is. He is at times come up with massive saves. Obviously, in the Champions League final, everyone talks about those saves. We can point to tons of other matches where that just wasn't the case. So it does seem weird in a way for Pep to want to abandon that. It seems as like a, as he's gotten older, he's always gotten a little bit more conservative. And it's like now he's older and he's potentially going to maybe bring in another keeper, because it seems more than just agent talk. It does seem like there is legitimate interest between these two players. But I guess that's kind of the piece I want to know more is like from a tactical fit. If Enrique can find a way to make it work, Enrique basically, don't want to say a Pep disciple, but someone that comes from Pep's coaching tree. How do you can see that potentially fitting in with Ederson potentially now on the way out?
Yeah, I saw a tweet from somebody today that said as as the center backs in a team get more and more efficient at distributing from the back and are better with the ball at their feet, that managers and directors of football may lean towards thinking that you can get away with a keeper who isn't as comfortable with the ball at his feet, and somebody who prioritizes shot stopping. I think that's a very valid idea to have. I think that that's something that the casual fan really likes about a goalkeeper is when they stop shots, and I think that type of mentality is now starting to spread maybe further up the chain into the football hierarchy and stuff like that. So maybe as we saw with Trafford versus Palermo, is pretty similar situation to him. He was a little bit sloppy and slow on the ball, but it seems like that is something that we are going to be willing to live with more and more over time. And I think that PSG replacing Donnarumma with Chevalier shows that that's something that's going across European football. I think that it is not as important to be an Ederson. I think an Ederson is a more of a luxury now than an essential thing, as opposed to when Pep came in and he had to force Hart out for Claudio Bravo and stuff like that just you know to get that style of play at the back because he wasn't as confident in the center backs and stuff like that. So I think that that landscape is shifting a little bit.
Which is weird because it really did feel in a way that like Ederson was almost, I don't want to say like this is, I love to make like cross sport comparisons. It felt almost maybe not like Steph Curry, but almost like a Reggie Miller or Ray Allen type of thing where it's like we don't have this and we haven't seen this and we don't really know how to use this type of thing. And I don't think he's impacted the game as much as like maybe you would say a Steph Curry has like broken the sport of basketball. I think it felt like that in those first few seasons. It was just like, who is this guy? And then teams were just like, oh, if we just don't press him, then it's fine. And
Yeah,
he's not like as deadly. And granted, he did have a ton of assists last year, but for the most part, teams were just like, well, you just won't press him. And the passing is then not as like much of like this deterrent, or I should say this crazy advantage, I should say. So that's the part where I find it a little bit interesting. I do think from a Trafford standpoint, I mean, City basically bought him for the price that they sold him at. I think the difference was just by a few million, and it does feel like, oh, is then he just going to get flipped next year? Which, hey, it'd be crazy to buy a player and then sell him the next year, right? Because that's definitely not a situation that City are currently running themselves into with another player that is going to be where originally was going to be talked about. I'd taken all these notes on him, and then we had to kind of throw that out of the window. But I guess real quick before moving to Savinho, is there anything else on Donnarumma that you want to kind of chat about, maybe between the situation with him and Trafford or anything else?
I was just going to say that I think that this is almost a buildup of like over time frustrations with Ederson. I think that there's a lot of advantages, and I don't know if he's really changed that much over the years to where people be like, oh well, now we really need to get rid of him. But I just think that these moments in high profile moments to where he comes up a bit short for us just wears on the fan base and through that wears on the club in general. Like you were saying earlier, he made those saves in the UCL final and we win the Champions League. And
Because
every
of
other
that.
exactly, and every other year that he doesn't make these saves, and it seems like he's a big reason that we're going out of these competitions. I think that that wears on people when they see,
Yeah.
well, if we just had somebody else that could make these saves consistently, maybe this could be something that we could regularly do, regularly win the Champions League. And I think I think that that's valid. That's something I push back against for a long time, because I see the value that he provides in build up. But at a certain point, you just have to almost face the music on that. He is lackluster in that area, and that's something that I think that we need, especially with the high line and stuff that we try to play right now.
Yeah, it's weird to think. I have always been like a really big Ederson defender, even during the like peak Ortega discourse, like even after the save against Sun, and, essentially like securing the title. It is weird to think that now that he's on his way out, and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah,
It's kind of an interesting thing of how far things have switched. It just for me, the most interesting aspect is the Pep aspect. 2 years ago, I would have actually thought it's crazy for Donnarumma to be the city keeper and for Pep to be the manager. And for it now to that actually to be the case, look, I do think it changes that he just won a treble with Luis Enrique. Like I do think that maybe makes Pep think like, hey, this is possible. But it is insane to think of how quickly that's changed.
yeah,
Tran- Transitioning over now, want to talk about Savinho, the other major one. So look, I mean, this is a player that I think has, I don't want to say divided City fans. I think all City fans have a mostly pretty positive feeling of him. He's a player that came in from Girona. I mean, technically Troyes, if you want to do the whole thing, but had played at Girona on loan, comes in, I wouldn't say lit it on fire, but at times showed a ton of promise, had shown that he actually can put a ball in. Him and Holland appeared to have pretty decent chemistry and had created quite a few chances for him. And it seems that potentially now he's on his way to Spurs. I guess I want to know your thoughts on the transfer overall and how you think he fits and kind of just the bizarreness of the situation that City, especially at least in like kind of the modern era, have never really found themselves in of a player wanting to leave this soon.
yeah. I think that my knee jerk reaction to the situation was no, don't let him leave. He's so young. He showed, as you said, so much promise last year, especially early in the season, back when the team wasn't broken fundamentally, as it became later and later in the season as the injuries piled up and stuff like that. But yeah, I think he's an amazing player. He's a top right quadrant type player, on all the graphs in terms of creative things and stuff like that. You mentioned his combination with Holland. He was Holland's best creator last season, bar none. I don't think it was even really close. He provided 11 assists, I believe, in the league or something like that in season one. Obviously, only the one goal, and I think that is what really probably drives City's desire, maybe, or willingness to let him leave and get in a player who maybe provides more goals in that sense. But I think it's selling really low. If you're asking my personal opinion, I think it's selling really low on him as a player because he's a player who could be a top five right winger in the world if all the things go right. If the finishing matches up to his movement and his intent and his dribbling and his speed in behind. This is a player for the big stages and the big spaces, as people say. So I think that he's a top prospect. I would be sad to see him go, but I do understand the reasons.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing just to kind of add in case someone gets really mad in the comments, it's 8 assists in the league, which
Okay.
still I believe did lead City. If not, it was higher than almost any other player. And then I'm just confirming his like across all comps, which it could have been then at that 11 number. Um,
I'd have been
but
13, but one of
it
them.
was
Yeah.
13. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was 13 if
Okay.
you count the Club World Cup as well. Yeah. So 13, 3 goals. His that's the one main thing for him is his XG numbers, like the goals to XG number is really bad. Granted, it's one season, and he outperformed his XG last season when he was at Girona. I guess 2 seasons ago at Girona. So it's one of those things where it could be one or the other. I think for me, I don't think I'm as high on him as I think the rest of the fan base. That isn't to say, oh, hey, I actually think that he's not good or he's not a good signing. I just think that he's someone that did show a ton of promise, and for the fee that City paid, it really depends on what the fee they're going to get back. If it's 50 million, absolutely not. I don't see a world where Spurs are going to pay 65, 70 plus for him. I just don't. I Everyone knows the relationship that City have with Daniel Levy. It's not a good one, and I'm honestly even surprised that they're entertaining this because it really did seem after Harry Kane that Pep was like, "We're never doing this again." Granted, there's a new director of football, there's a new relationship there, so maybe it's something where it's not as bad, and they can have Hugo take care of that, and he's just basically like, "Hey, I wasn't here last time," and they're maybe to have a little bit more kind of a civil conversation around it, but it's it's interesting for me because I think that he's someone that on the right wing, it kind of was his spot since Doku doesn't seem to like to play there as much as Pep really does want him to play there. But now with Foden most likely making a return, Cherokee being signed, one of them is mostly going to play out there on the right if one's going to be central. And then Oscar Bob, who basically essentially missed the entire season due to that leg break. There is less of a need for him. And to shout out Alex Michel, someone else who had been on this podcast before, I'd mentioned in the thread that kind of one of Savinho's best things was crossing on his left foot from the left side. And there's a new player there. Eight Nori is going to be able to potentially do some of that. And it doesn't mean that like, oh, hey, he's useless. He has no place in the team. To kind of use a saying is he can kind of be replaced in the aggregate a little bit. So it is a little interesting. And I guess more so I want to think about that is do you think that makes the him leaving sting less?
Yeah, I think it does. I'm unsure if we are going to replace him in the aggregate. It sounds a lot like they're going to bring somebody else in to replace him on that left side, which is another reason I think that City might be willing to nudge him towards the door. I don't want to say they're going to push him out, but I was thinking that they might want to nudge him that direction. If you just look at the numbers, you got, like you said, the three players already playing on the right side, and on the left side, you only really have two right now if you don't include Savinho. You have Doku and you have Marmoush, and Marmoush likes to play centrally a lot as well. So really,
Yeah.
you're only having Doku. So I do think that when they were looking at that, they identified a balance issue in terms of that, in terms of players that can play on either side. I think that if Doku gets injured, I think you're looking at possibly some real issues. So I understand why they're looking at a left sided attacker, even though I would rather just keep Savinho because he can also play over there. But it is, I understand the wanting a inverted player over there to play that way.
And I guess when it comes down to replacements, at the time of recording, Real Madrid are about to be playing. Rodrigo's on the bench. Brahim Diaz is starting over him. Um, Funny in its own way for a variety
Yep.
of reasons. But Rodrigo's signing is interesting because I don't see him as, I don't know if he's 100 million, pound, dollar, euro, insert your currency of choice player. I do think he's obviously a quality player, but he's someone that does constantly feel like he's on the outs in a Real Madrid side. That doesn't mean that he's not quality. It feels bizarre. I can't even, honestly, I think it's very hard for me to imagine him in this City side. And because I don't think he's a player that's like Savinho, I think he's a player that kind of operates a little bit more inside than wide. And to me, it's not a like for like move. Very rarely are players like for like anyways, because if you're getting rid of a player, there's normally a reason why. And so I guess, is Rodrigo someone that you would A, I guess, want to see on City, or B, think that that would then maybe be the right decision?
I think that Rodrigo is an elite player, or an elite talent, I would say. As you said, it has been difficult to see him in a Real Madrid side perform to that level. We've seen glimpses of it when Vinny is out and he gets to play on the left wing. And I think that is the biggest issue for him. I think that's why me, as well as the hierarchy there, would take probably a risk on him in that type of situation. I see him as a player, like you said, he is not a like for like. He is not a touchline player. He reminds me more of an Oscar Bob type, to where he's going to sit in the pocket and be able to go wide, dribbles, pocket type player, quick link up, stuff like that. And I think that is the way that the City side is trending in a way, especially when we saw Cherky playing the 10. He loves doing those quick little interchanges and stuff like that. So versus Palermo, we saw that a bunch with him and Rico. So I think he's a great fit. I don't know how the minutes distribution is going to be in that way. Like we discussed earlier, there's quite a few players fighting for the positions there, but yeah, I like him as a player. He's a player I've liked for a long time, and I do think that there's probably untapped potential there waiting to be realized. So
I mean, the technical ability would be insane if it's like, I'm just imagining like a front. I mean, Holland's going to be in this, but like other than Holland, it's going to be like if you could see Rodrigo in a world, Rodrigo, Foden, Reinders, Bob. I don't think Cherky then also could like potentially come into that as well. But you just think of the amount of bodies that could be put onto the pitch at any one time. I mean, it is just an insane amount of technical ability to work with. We'll see. I don't know. I really didn't think that there would be a big signing that would come in, but there's such a madness that's coming in, and I guess maybe that speaks to some of the differences between Viana and Cheeky, is that this does feel different. I don't know if chaotic. I wouldn't use that word, but it does feel much more public
mhm.
than what we're kind of used to. And I guess to kind of put you on the spot here, can you tell the clear differences between maybe a Cheeky and Viana run side, or do you think that this year, due to the Club World Cup and due to just the nature of kind of a weird off season, has played a role in that?
I was gonna say I think that over time, Cheeky really evolved his strategy. Early in the City sides, there was the two players for every position. Even if maybe you weren't getting the top talent to be your number one in each position, you had players that you felt comfortable with in both. Over time, and as we got more and more focused on winning in European competitions, it was obvious to me that he was trying to build up that first 11 quality over time, and I think that he did, and we peaked in 2023 doing that. I think that it was an effective strategy, but I think that we saw the pitfalls of that strategy last year when those players that you bank almost everything on can't remain fit and won't play, 50 matches for you a season. And I think Viana is kind of going back to that type of strategy early in Chiqui's tenure, to where we're trying to stack these positions. We're trying to be sure that if something goes wrong, we have contingency plans in place so that we can still perform and not have a top four battle, which is obviously unacceptable, not only from a sporting sense, but from a financial sense, which was obviously terrified them, I think, towards the end of last year. I think that's why you see a Nico Gonzalez transfer on the last day of the January windows, because they're terrified of these situations where they just, can't make ends meet. So I think that that's really what he's trying to avoid right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. The last thing I kind of want to mention around with Savio is everyone's favorite discussion, Jeremy Doku. I lean in the Doku camp. I am Team
Okay.
Doku over Savinho. I think I am one of the few and the proud. But I want to know your thoughts, and we can have a little bit more of a discussion about it.
I think it's really tight. I don't think that there's very much that separates them in terms of overall value to the team. I think that what you're looking at, if you're looking at trying to keep one over the other, I know that's not really a discussion because I don't think Doku has any eyes to leave or anything like that. But I think if you're looking in that situation, you're looking at their ceilings, and I can definitely see a scenario to where somebody thinks that Doku is a higher ceiling. He has something that is completely unstoppable, his dribbling. Nobody can hold him in world football. No fullback can really do it one on one. And I think that if he hits his ceiling, that's one of the best players in the world, maybe a top 10 type player. You know, if he's consistently finding and picking out men in the box and scoring goals himself with that type of lethal, dribbling in and out, and he just has a good sense and aggressiveness in that way. I think Savinho has a lot of the same type of things like that, but to a lesser degree. He's not the generational athlete that Jeremy Doku is. I've not seen somebody who dribbles quite the way that Jeremy Doku dribbles. So I could see it either way. I lean Savinho personally right now in terms of the player that I think that they are at the moment because of his connection with Holland and stuff like that. But I could definitely see Doku, surpassing him.
Yeah, I mean it's when you look at their football reference, Savinho is the number one similar player to Doku. It's not the same on the other end. On the other end, I mean, like Savinho has it's like Lamine Yamal is like the most compared from a stat standpoint, which I do find really interesting. Which is kind of crazy. I don't think that is the case, but it was really interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, to all the points that you made, Doku is at a level of dribbling that, at least in current world football, is just not something that anyone even comes close to. He is in the 99th percentile in absolutely everything that matters. Savinho, by the way, is in the 95th or 96th percentile. So it's not like this is like
Yeah,
some it's really not that far. But yeah, I think as long as if Savinho can find a way to maybe pop some of those crosses to the rear post, and Holland can find a way to maybe sometimes, instead of always doing a rear post run, make a run to the front post, or someone else that can be making a run into that front post area where it seems like Doku's only able to put a cross in, I think that it could be absolutely destructive. My only thing for me as the reason as to why I feel like it is Doku over Savinho, from a stat standpoint, they're pretty similar from an output. Doku has a few more goals. Savinho has a few more assists. Uh, Doku in total played about 1,000 less minutes because there were some injury issues that Doku suffered this season. But I
which
also think of how many times, which matters, and that does matter, and it's something that has plagued him since his time before at City. This is something that has consistently affected him. And when you think of someone who is so reliant on their pace and physical abilities as well, it's scary. Granted, he is still really young, but that is something where that has an impact on a player, which is totally fair. But I think of the amount of times, and I think it's the reason why Doku's gotten a lot of stick, where it really did feel like Pep was just like, this is on you. We are going to give you the ball 75 times, and you are going to attack that byline 45 times this game. And it felt like a very much of like a trust from Pep of like, this is on you. If Pep didn't like that, it wouldn't happen week in and week out. It wouldn't just constantly be the Jeremy Doku show every single match. And I think that's the reason why it's like, you might not like it and you might want to complain about it on Twitter, because he does honestly just launch cross after cross after cross into the 6-yard box, and then the center back is just parrying it away. However, it seems like that is for Pep. It's like, that's what I want, and that's what we're going to be doing. And I think it's telling when you now see like Grealish announced at Everton on loan that is something that Pep really did want and need out of his side. I
yeah,
yield my time.
yeah. I was gonna say I'm one of those people who has been guilty, I would think, of being a little harsh on Doku in the immediate aftermath of a match that maybe doesn't go our way, and we see this high usage, as you say, version of
It's
him.
Westbrook esque.
It is, and I don't think it's fair. I honestly, I have regrets about the way that I probably viewed that in that moment, but I think that it is also something that he knows that he needs to work on. I've seen him speak about this, about finding the man, and as we're going to get into, I think that some of these transfers will really help him in that respect in terms of giving him options and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, let's move into it. Let's talk about the summer window. I mean, I think so. Kind of the three biggest names that came in: Tajani Reinders, Ryan Cherky, Ryan Nori. Trafford, although now maybe is going to be the second biggest goalkeeper transfer that comes in this window. Kicking it to you, of those signings, who, I guess, especially of those kind of like three main ones, the two Ryans and Reinders, who are you most excited about, and who do you think could potentially have the biggest impact on the club this season?
Yeah, I'm super excited about all of them, but I would have to say, just given on the impact that I believe he's going to have, I would have to say Ryan Cherky. Everything that we've seen at Lyon with him is magnificent. Obviously, there's the transitioning to the Premier League type of thing, but he is a 99th percentile creator. He is was the number one creator for me in Europe last season. I think that that is obviously something that City desperately need in the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, and I think that I think that he is just an immense talent. He has everything. He has the passing. He has the ball striking. He has the dribbling. He has the sense. He has the confidence. I think that that's something we really saw versus Palermo was his confidence to always seek the ball, to go deep, to retrieve, to go left to right, to play the 1-2s with anybody. That we've been a little bit reluctant in recent years to play with the Bernardos and Gundawans. They're less comfortable in those types of situations, and I think that with your Fodens and your Bobs and your Rico Lewis's surrounding him, and maybe even your Rodrigos, as we were saying, surrounding him, I think that these things are just only going to platform him to another level. And I haven't even mentioned Holland, which is a great striker for him to constantly have stretching the back line. Marmoush, he has options, and this is the ideal situation I think for a creator like Ryan Cherky. And all this doesn't even go to mention there was an article written by my friend Brandon Manuel on Twitter the other day discussing Cherky and his ability to replace Rodri almost in the aggregate in terms of our build-up and in terms of being a pressure valve for other players around him and the comfort that that brings everybody in our build-up and even in our final third play against a low block. Just always having someone like that that you can dump the ball off to. They're going to keep the ball, and then on top of it, they can create to an elite level. This is something that first part that I said about keeping the ball and being a pressure valve is something that Grealish provided. But Grealish, after getting up the pitch, wasn't really that elite creator as Ryan Cherky was. And I think that that is a new level of player that we really need in this side. And I think that's a spark that will really change how we attack. And we've already seen it a bit this year. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the Al Hilal match in particular, when you think of how often he was just dropping deep, it's kind of a combination of a few players. If you remember, like back during I would almost say like the peak kind of City years when Bernardo would kind of like basically play as like a double pivot, and his job was just basically to break the press. It feels a little bit in that kind of way that he might be someone that can kind of go in that same way as someone that I can drop deep, and then he is also 2-footed. And it's weird to think. Look, I don't know if there's and I really mean this, I don't know if there's ever going to be a player like Kevin De Bruyne ever again. Someone with that like combination, and Cherky doesn't have that same kind of like pace and power, but he does have at least some athleticism. But someone that can create in that kind of way, and basically it's FIFA-esque is the best way to kind of describe what De Bruyne's creativity is. But you saw it in the Al Hilal match with the assist of Foden that he might still have that same ability. And I'm curious to see him and Holland seem close. There was that video that kind of everyone was kind of joking about on Twitter of like the two of them kind of like bumping around with each other. Yeah, it's like the smallest guy on the field with this like absolute monster of a man. And so if they can kind of build chemistry on the pitch together, I do think that it is something that, I mean, it's desperately needed. I don't think he's a De Bruyne replacement, but you can see the signs. For me, I think, especially after the friendly that just happened against Palermo, Reinders I'm really excited by. I think he's a player that, look, for work, I have to watch Milan matches more so just because for Pulisic in case he does something, because I work for an American soccer company and he's our LeBron James.
yep.
But it's a thing where he is someone that would like stick out, and it wasn't really a thing of I wasn't watching Milan games in the sense of like really trying to understand the side. I mean, I with work I might have 3-4 games on sometimes, so it's really not a thing where I'm like paying that much attention to. But he would stick out. He's someone that I think is. I can see like aspects of Gundogan. I can see aspects, a little bit of Rodri in him as well. I wasn't expecting him to have this as much of, I guess, like, even though his numbers are really high in for like goal, like XG and stuff on Football Reference, but he never struck me as someone that's like, oh, this is someone that's going to make a lot of late runs and score. And then the Palermo match, granted, this is against a Serie B side. So it's really, I don't know how much we're really going to be like freaking out about this, but it's a thing where I was like, oh, maybe he really can make those late runs. And to the point of everything else that we've talked about, this could be a thing where he can bring some of the stuff that Gundogan did, although he does feel to be a little bit more athletic, a little bit more dynamic on the ball than Gundogan ever was. But he's a player that I think is going to bring some much needed legs, some much needed physicality into that midfield, which especially last season, just I can't watch Kovacic just stand still and then have to jog back as he just gets absolutely burnt. And it's a thing where I'm really, really excited about it. I don't know if the ceiling is high. I should say the ceiling is not as high. I think Turkey has potential to be one of the best players in the world, like Ballon d'Or level type of player. I don't think Reinders has that, but Reinders does feel much more of a floor raiser and much more of a immediately walks into the team, immediately has an impact. Cherki might be one of those like second season Cherki vibes for me. And that's the only reason why I'm maybe a little bit more worried about him coming in.
I'm super bullish on Reinders. I think that, as you said, he has all those aspects of Gundogan and a little bit of Bernardo, and the way that he doesn't lose the ball. His retention stats are insane. Like, he's one of the best ball retention players, and he's really smart with his passes. His pass percentages are really high, even though he's a player that plays further up the pitch and stuff like that. But as you were saying with the goal scoring, obviously we all knew the goal scoring numbers last year when he won Player of the Year in Serie A. Like, they were there, they're real. But watching it live, it's Foden-esque in the way that he's able to find spaces as other players and things are moving around him. In all this chaos, he's able to find these spaces to where he can have a one-on-one opportunity with the goalkeeper out of nowhere. And I think that obviously we saw with Gundogan in 2021, that is extremely valuable. If you can consistently nail that down, those runs, there are players in the city side, like we discussed with Turkey, that can find you. And with Doku, we were discussing with Doku those near post runs and those runs late into the box that were lacking more so with Kovacic and even later stage Gundogan as his legs start to go. He doesn't really have that engine anymore. I think that he's a super, as you said, floor raiser for these types of players. He platforms them to an exceptional degree.
Yeah, I'm excited. He needs to change his jersey number. We need to get him off of 4. That's kind of the main thing. Honestly, most of the new signings all need new jersey numbers. I know that's like the least important thing, but that's something where it's like, hey, 10's available now. So like, let's see if maybe we can get this on one of these two, on either Turkey or Reinders, because 4,
29
not.
doesn't work for me either. I can't do 29. That's horrible. That's terrible, man.
It's like, this is one of the best city kits in years. I want to buy that black kit so bad. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't really buy, I very rarely ever buy city kits. Like, it's really like once every 5 years type of thing. But this away kit, and it's just like, I'm not getting a 29 or a 4. It's not happening.
No way.
So I'm going to try to figure out what to do with that. Maybe it's just no number this year and pray that Puma maybe has a good jersey next year, but let's be real.
Yeah.
So I guess then, and we've talked about Kovacic a little bit. We've talked about Gundogan a little bit. We talked about De Bruyne leaving. Do you think that City have done enough to kind of bolster this squad, this spine of the team, which has been probably, if not the best Premier League squad ever? I mean, United obviously won more titles in their heyday, but there was just not the same type of squad from year over to year. Is this enough, do you think, replace this aging core, or do you think that there's a little bit more that needs to be done?
For me, personally, I think that the right back situation is not as big of an issue as people are making it out to be. It has become a bit of an obsession for me. I think that people hyperfixate on this a bit. I think everywhere else in the squad, you're looking at overcrowding, especially in the midfield. I think that they've done more than enough to get us into a situation where we should feel comfortable going into next season. I think the main thing we have to worry about is man management and minutes distribution. We're looking at 6 players for the 2 double pivot positions. You have your Reinders, Kova, Gundo, Bernardo, Nico Gonzalez, and Rodri. I think that's a lot of players to manage across just 2 positions, right? Like, and none of them
It's
really.
a lot.
Yeah, and none of them really want to like take a back seat. Reinders coming off a Player of the Year. He's a big profile transfer. There's no way he's going to take a back seat. He's probably expecting to be a first 11 type of player. Kovacic.
One thing to jump in real quick with Ryan, I'm just worried that people are going to get mad because we're two Americans. He won Midfielder of the Year, and Scott McTominay won Player
Oh,
of the Year as just like a small.
apologies,
And I know,
my
and
bad.
it's this. He still
Yeah,
won a major award. I just want to put it out there before someone in the comments screams at us that we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
I'm
That's
so
all.
glad you said it. I'm so glad
Yes, I
the
just go
Yank
keep.
comments. I can't do it,
Yeah,
so so I'm worried. But yeah, you have Reinders who was great and is probably expecting to be there. Nico Gonzalez is a similar situation. He's a lower profile transfer given that he came from Porto and he's not that high profile of a player. But he's still not going to be a player that you can expect to just store in the cups. Like he's not going to be a Carabao and FA Cup type player. Gundo and Bernardo, they're best friends with Pep, and Bernardo's the captain. If we look at any of the history surrounding our captains, that's probably a first 11 type of player pretty
yeah,
consistently, I would bet. And then you have Rodri, who does anything really need to be said? I mean, he's a Ballon d'Or winner, but the only thing I think with that, maybe we'll get some reprieve because he's coming off the injury. He's going to need to be managed. He's obviously already having recurring injuries. So, it's just where do you find the minutes? And if you do try to find the minutes for all of these guys, you know, where do you keep them in form? Are they able to stay in form? Or do you need to focus on a few of them to keep them in form and get them chemistry? I don't know. It's a lot. I think that City have absolutely done enough. I almost wonder if they've done too much, is what I would say to that question.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in typical City fashion, for the most part, this changes if Donnarumma and or Rodrigo come in. None of these signings are like superstar signings. De Bruyne a little bit felt like it when he came in, but there were still plenty of people where it's like, this is the guy that didn't work out at Chelsea, disregarding the fact that he had just set the record for Bundesliga assists. Aguero a little bit as well, just because he was someone that kind of like lit the world on fire at Atletico. And anytime there's a young, Argentinian striker, it just like, no matter what, it's going to be 2055 and we're still going to be really excited about a young Argentinian striker. It's just like, that's just how it works. This does feel similar in a way. Like there's not a lot of like major, signings. By losing out on Verts, even though you look at the underlying numbers between Verts and Turkey and they're so similar, and the fact that Turkey was a fraction of the cost does make you think of like this is maybe potentially how City can do business historically. It does feel a little bit like there is a lot of, plug and play, multiple positions, versatility, like typical City signings. I do think there is a chance, I'm sorry for everyone, but Bernardo is still probably going to play at wide right. It's still going to happen at times. Turkey, same thing. I think Turkey and Foden, I'm curious to see which one's going to stay centrally, which one's going to get put out wide. Based on the Al Hilal match, it seems like it might be that Turkey's going to be wide and then Foden's going to play more centrally, but I think that obviously it depends on lineup, and if both of them are on the pitch, I still think you could see times where any one of those players are in a different position. It is a little bit of a logjam, and it's weird to think it's been a minute since City really had a squad this big, and Pep loves telling people and loves letting every journalist know and in every press conference how he feels about small squads, and this really isn't that much of a small squad. And so I guess what I'll say from that is there players that you wish could have left? Is there something where you were like, hey, this player really needed to be moved on and they haven't?
Yeah, it's tempting to say the unks, in midfield or whatever. Your Gundawans, your Kovas, your Bernardos, even though he's the club captain. I think that it really comes down to their mentality. If their mentality is, I want to play how I played in years past, I think that could be a problem. I think that maybe if that's their mentality, maybe they should be moved on. If Gundogan's okay with being basically a player coach for the second half of the season after these guys get bedded in and more comfortable in the system, then I think there could be less issues in that regard. But as we were talking about with the minutes distribution, I think that if he's really expecting to be a 2,000 plus minute player again this season, that we could run into some issues with how happy is Nico Gonzalez remaining, even though he just came here on transfer and stuff like that. So we'll see with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels like this is the last year for Gundogan. It does really, I mean, maybe he goes to Turkey and really does like kind of just get a really big paycheck and just kind of gets to go technically home. But it does kind of feel like this might be now he's just going to become a coach after this season. And I am kind of curious to see how that goes, because to your point, I do wonder, is he going to take a back seat a little bit? is it going to be more? I don't want to say quite Fernandinho esque, but that last Fernandinho year where like Rodri was kind of coming in, we weren't really sure who was going to win that battle, and it felt like Fernandinho was just quite literally going to be uh, a manager, and he actually ended up he hasn't joined the squad yet, although he just kind of periodically pop in. Kovacic, I think if Kovacic doesn't get hurt, I think he's gone. I think they would have found a way to move him, and I think that surgery has really kind of like no one's going to buy this player and bring him in, and he's not going to be able to play till October. Like it just really makes it pretty difficult to move on, and I feel like someone's going to be upset. It does feel like we might get a Sam Lee article in June that like 4 players are on the verge of leaving because they haven't played enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is interesting with the Kova one, with the reports that came out from Fabrizio about City asking him to stay and stuff like that. See, it's things like that that concern me a little bit because if you're asking him to stay, are you guaranteeing him minutes? Are you giving him guarantees in that way that you gave Kyle Walker when you went to dinner over that to ask him to stay? And that we saw how that panned out with Kyle Walker over time. I think that those are real concerns there in that regard.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've talked about kind of the bloating of the squad, which I think is a perfect segue into just thoughts on the squad overall and how they're going to set up. I think obviously the most glaring one is the loss of De Bruyne, who was not as much last year, but has honestly just been the key cog, arguably City's best ever player. Some people are still in the David Silva camp or the Aguero camp, but probably the greatest player that City's ever had. I don't think that there is someone, we've talked about this in the sense of Turkey is not a direct De Bruyne replacement, but how do you see kind of City to line up this year? How do you expect them to show up?
Yeah, I think that obviously Pep has a lot of tactical variation throughout the season. I think that we're going to, like every other season, see him chop and change with the system, invert guys here, have guys stay wide here, and stuff like that. I think that the way that the squad is currently set up, I think that it is towards that inside forward type of situation with the wingers, to where you're pushing them both in really close to Holland. I think that the profiles in our squad really match that, and along with the fullback profiles that we have, obviously Ryan Ait-Nouri, he makes this really easy on the left side in terms of any system, honestly, because he can play wide, he can play inside. He works with Marmoush, he works with Doku, he would even work with Savinho if he stays, or Rodrigo, or anybody like that. So I think that pushing the guys in centrally, getting them closer to Holland for link ups, I think that they're really going to try to maximize Holland this year. We've already seen it with more quick transitions. Like they're trying to get combinations deep in midfield so that they can get these faux transitions, even in situations where a transition wouldn't normally occur and stuff like that. It's tricky with them, you know. There's so many options in terms of midfield. If you're going to play Nico Gonzalez a lot of minutes, then you're going to be in a primarily double pivot system. But if you're going to play Reinders there most of the time, then he's probably going to sit higher up. I think that it's a really big question on how that little dynamic in the center of the pitch, where he normally creates the box midfield, how he decides to manage that. I think that that is probably the question of the season for Pep, and will be a big determiner of how we perform this season, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like what we're going to see between the stop-start nature at the beginning of the season, where there's so many international breaks, it feels like what we're going to see. I feel like we're going to see a lot of the unks and less of the newer signings, maybe bar Reinders. I do feel like Reinders is maybe just going to straight walk into this team, but it feels like there might be a little bit of a reliance on some of the older players at first, but you could tell me by the winter period that it is all the new guys, or at least they're getting a lot more time. And I guess when specifically with De Bruyne leaving with Turkey, how much do you think of that creativity is going to fall on him? Do you think it's going to be off the jump? And do you think he's ready for that? Or do you think it's something where it might be that might come later?
I think he's ready for it. And I am honestly surprised at how much Pep has put trust in him already so far. So if you would have asked me this about a month ago before we had seen the match versus Palermo, I would have told you that probably not. Like he's probably not going to get this responsibility right off the jump, just given how Pep likes to, even if a player is playing well, sometimes Pep likes to pull them aside just to make sure that they're doing it perfect. You know, like he doesn't want to get anybody into bad habits and stuff like that. But it just really seems like And given the fact that Pep is the one who asked for Turkey specifically, given reports that came out, it really seems he's fully bought in to this style of player and what he can provide for City across different tactical setups and stuff like that. So the numbers back it up. Pep backs it up with his selection. I would say that I'd probably be pretty confident that Turkey is going to get a lot of the reins, especially in versus low blocks. I would say 100% you're going to see a lot of Ryan Turkey. Maybe in the bigger matches to where his athleticism might be more exposed in the center or something. Exposed, you could say. I don't think he's that bad of an athlete as
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
says, but I think that you could see maybe a Marmoush playing through the center, somebody who could stretch the back line along with Holland and something like that instead, or, get your creation from wide, whether if Savinho leaves or not, or Oscar Bob and Doku on the wings and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that he's going to have a lot of opportunity to show us.
It's interesting. I think I want to be wrong with Turkey. I think it would be. I mean, obviously, it'd be great. It'd be great if he's just absolutely walks in and is just a world beater immediately. I just I think I'm so used to players taking their time. It feels a little, and I mentioned this on Twitter. It feels like it might be a little Bernardo 17-18 esque, where it's like I think Bernardo had the most appearances that season, but he like rarely ever started. But there was like these glimpses that you would see of where he was just like always, no matter what, he was in every match. Pep wanted him in every match at some point, and eventually just became a key staple. So I hope I'm wrong. You mentioned Bob. I don't want to talk about Savinho or Doku anymore. I think enough of City Twitter and just the fandom at large has talked about that. But I mean, look, if you think about a year ago, this was like the summer of Bob. He was completely showing off in all of the friendlies. He was looking truly like an unbelievable player. The injury and the type of injury, I don't think could have been more devastating. I'm honestly almost glad that he missed the season from hell. Like he hopefully missed a lot of just the frankly like bullshit that went on, probably by focused on training. Some of the clips that have come out, like the clip that went by earlier this week of him absolutely skidding a few players and scoring, he seems to be the player that he looked last season. Do you think he's someone where he's going to really be consistently competing for minutes on the right wing, or do you think it's something where he might have to kind of sit back a little bit?
I'm maybe as big of an Oscar Bob fan as you can possibly get. I think that he pretty much has everything. I'm known for pretty much being the Foden fan, but if you told me that Oscar Bob ended up being a better player than Phil Foden over the aggregate of years, I wouldn't be shocked. He honestly is lightning quick, all the technical ability in the world, intention, can score goals, has composure under pressure in the box to find guys. He finds so many cutbacks, like he found Turkey versus Palermo. But I remember last summer, he was finding Holland every single preseason match, 4 goals. This is something that he has the low center of gravity. He's just everything that you would want from a City winger that can play wide, can come inside, can do all these different things. And I think that honestly, Savinho's willingness to leave is really a direct result of this. I think that
Yeah.
people in the squad can see that Oscar Bob is going to have a serious role to play this season, injuries permitting, obviously. But I think that this is a player that can be a superstar. This is a player that can lock down a first 11 spot for Manchester City over a course of years. That is the type of talent I believe he is.
Bob Casso.
Yeah, I maybe.
An account's going to pop up soon. Make sure you lock down that
Yeah,
handle.
exactly.
I It's so clear when you watch someone that's from the City Academy, and it's just like he just has everything that you could possibly want. And I really hope that this is not an injury that's going to like impact the rest of his career, just because it really did feel so special in that preseason time. And it's like, wow, this is really someone that we're going to see. And it really sucks that it was taken from us, but I'm excited. Separate from Bob, I think there's kind of three players that I think are essentially going to be making their return this season. I think we have Foden. I think I might know how you're going to feel about that. Who, I mean, it look, to be honest, he basically had an injury riddled season. It just wasn't physically; it was mentally. You have Rodri completely tears everything in his knee, and we have John Stones. So these are three key players, three of arguably the biggest players of the Pep era. Obviously, Foden much more recently. Same with Rodri. Stones has been a staple from the beginning of the Pep era. All of them are most likely going to be returning. I guess, is there of these three players, is there someone that you're most excited about? Is it where all three you're excited about? kind of take the floor.
Yeah, I think that Foden is due a rebound. I really think that a lot of the obituaries basically written about his career are very premature. Obviously,
Insane.
I would have this opinion, to be honest, but he is so talented, and there is nothing that fundamentally changed about him as a player that would reduce his ability to be as effective as we saw him for the previous 4 or 5 seasons. And I think that a lot of that just built up. He is a player that came in around 20 years old and started playing 3,000 minutes a season basically every year for the high 2000s around there. He was an instrumental player for 4 years, and then he was due a downturn, I think. And I think that players like that do rebound as long as nothing fundamentally changed. So I really look forward to seeing what he provides this season. Rodri, as we discussed, he will have to wait and see. Honestly, these
Yeah,
recurring injuries with knee
I'm
injuries,
nervous.
yeah, I mean, especially the Al Hilal game where he got pulled out after 30 minutes or so on the pitch, I was like, I don't know about this. Like you see it happen with players who get knee injuries like that, then the hamstring starts popping up, and then you get the calf strains and the quad strains and stuff like that. So hopefully he can do it. He was such a high minutes player beforehand. You almost hope that his body can rebound into that type of, his muscles can remain elastic and stuff like that, and not get muscle pulls all the time and stuff like that. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. I have faith in the city medical staff to get him right, but we'll have to see. And John Stones, it's another one. He's a starting level player. Obviously, you can't keep John Stones out of the lineup if he's consistently healthy and in good form because of it. But that's the thing. I saw him. He missed 33 games, I believe, last season due to injury, and that's just that's there's nothing you can do with that. You can't even play him in the few games when he's back because he's not fit. He's not in form really for these matches. So I really hope he gets back into form. And I I would have a bit of faith that John Stones can figure it out because he's been in this back against the wall type of situation at City before, given with fitness and form and stuff like that back in 2019, 2020. So hopefully he can get that back managed.
If John Stones has no fans, I am dead.
Exactly.
That's the injuries are unacceptable. I'm not going to defend it, but it does feel like maybe he does not take care of his body as well as maybe he's supposed to. It really does seem like Pep gets quite frustrated about it, but he is someone that I think when he's in the squad, it's just different. There's a different level of calm. There's a just things tick faster. Everything just moves that fraction of a second faster when he's there. And I think it's something where it's very noticeable when he's out. And I just, to whatever God I need to pray to make him stay healthy. That's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, when it comes to Foden, look, this is a guy, he benched Raheem Sterling. Like, this is a player that from especially the COVID season on has just been absolutely vital. And it feels like the false nine season, I think people outside of the City bubble felt that he wasn't contributing as much just because he wasn't having maybe like necessarily the production that you would expect. But City don't win the fourth title in a row without him. He was absolutely instrumental. Other than Rodri, was the best player on the pitch during all of 23, 24, especially the second half. He was just absolutely instrumental. And I think a lot about I don't know if you remember the Pep interview. I think he did it with Rio Ferdinand a few years ago, where he mentioned how Phil doesn't have any stresses in his life yet. And it's actually like incredibly like accurate. He was like, he has nothing to stress about yet. And as he gets older and has more kids and things start happening in his life, like then we'll see. It's kind of really weird to think that like all of a sudden, then like 2-3 years later, he's essentially kind of at this like weird, I don't want to say crossroads is aggressive, but he's having this moment of where there's a confidence issue, whether it's because wasn't selected a lot in the Euros and World Cup, or didn't perform kind of in the way in the Euros that people maybe would expect. And so, but with De Bruyne gone, there's a power vacuum, there's a creative vacuum that I just feel we need to see it. And granted, the Club World Cup is the Club World Cup, but just to see him happy, just to see him smiling, just to see him put goals into the back of the net really makes me feel like the Fodenaissance is on, and I am here for it. and I will be there for him no matter what.
Absolutely. I think that the fan base needs to do a lot better in that regard in terms of just staying behind these guys and not flipping at every moment. Obviously, we know that these guys see these social media things. I think that there's a tendency to build these things up, and I think that quite happened quite a bit with him last season. He was seeing it, feeling it.
Yeah, I mean the fan base at large, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
I think I really honestly just stopped. Like, I put the phone down for much of last season, and
Hmm.
it's yeah, it's quite frustrating, and the vibes seem to be better, although the stuff with Savinho and Donnarumma, we'll see. I don't know. People are always going to be upset, but it just, yeah. So, I mean, I guess, do you have, and I can kind of build this out so people can see it. When you think of the actual lineup, how City are going to line up most of the time, do you think is there something where you expect this is what it's going to look like week in, week out? Obviously, injuries, fitness, things like that. But if you were to just name an 11 that
Yeah.
you think we are consistently going to see, what do you think?
I think my first 11, the 11 that I think will be in the Champions League, the late stages, which are the matches that all these players want to play. I think you're looking at Ryan Ait-Nuri at left back for sure. I think that he's got to play as many minutes as pretty much possible this season as his body will allow. Gvardiol at your left center back position. I think that he's pretty much locked that down and earned that over the last few years. Your right center back position is interesting. I personally would always play Ruben Diaz in a big match. I think that his box defending when we are truly under pressure is maybe the best in the world. I don't know anybody else who is getting in front of as many shots as he consistently finds himself. But I wouldn't be opposed to a Kusanov, in that type of a situation. But also just
Wow.
just for the speed, in those matches, just for
Totally.
the bit, because our other center backs, they're not slow. I wouldn't say that they're exceptionally slow. Maybe Diaz is lacking in pace a little bit, but
Diaz isn't that quick. But other than that, that's it.
yeah. But when you're coming up against a Real Madrid that has Mbappe, it has Vinicius and stuff like that, I just feel like you need somebody that can sweep up in the back line, even in front of your keeper, who is also going to be sweeping and stuff like that. You can also get that in a different way. Obviously, you could play Kusanov at right back, which we saw against Madrid last season against Vinny and stuff like that. If you really need the pace on the right side, but I really would prefer a Nunes there, and I can't believe I'm saying that. To be honest, I was a huge Nunes believer when he came in. I'd fallen off a little bit on that train. He was kind of this. He didn't really have a set position in the squad, so I was kind of worried. But last season, that flying right back role, if he can just keep his head a little bit when he's under one-on-one pressure in transition, I think that he is a really good solution there, especially for platforming what we have going up the pitch. I think in your double pivot ahead of that, I think you're looking at Reinders Rodri. I don't know if there's really any way around that. I think that you pretty much Rodri obviously is going to play, and then Reinders has been so good already, and we've already seen what he can provide over the course of a full season at Milan. So I think that he's probably there. Your attacking midfielder, your 10, and your right wing, I think that's Foden, Turkey. Yeah, everybody has their opinion on which should be which. Personally, I like Turkey out wide right for a multitude of reasons. One, at Lyon and in his early career here at City, you've seen him just have this tendency to pull wide right always. He never really pulls wide left. I know that he's 2-footed and all of this, but he's obviously more comfortable with the angles on the right side of the pitch. And then Foden, I prefer him in the middle just so that he can make those box crashing runs, so he can use his instincts as almost a second striker, which I think is probably his best role.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the Club World Cup with that, like you said, that run that Turkey found for him to equalize in that match in extra time. And then I would play Marmoush on the left wing, just because you have Ryan Ait-Nuri who can play wide, and you can have Marmoush as another player who's an option breaking beyond the back line and sweeping up in the box for these balls that Turkey is going to play. He's so high usage. He's going to need a ton of options to play forward. And then obviously the big man, the big Norwegian up top. So yeah.
Oscar Bob. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to have Oscar Bob in this lineup, honestly, after everything that I said earlier about how great and amazing I think he is. But it's just so tough. It is so tight for spots up there in the first 11. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty similar, obviously. I mean, when I think of, Ederson, I'm assuming he's going to be the one in goal. So
Yeah.
Ederson
Yeah.
in And the goal, we'll see if Donnarumma comes in. I don't really want to think about that. This is where it gets really tricky because I think that Gvardiol has locked down that left back spot, but when you bring in an Eight Nori and there's just a million question marks in the defense, it does feel a little bit like a passing of the torch moment. So I could see Gvardiol maybe early on in the season, maybe a little bit standing out on the left side, although he is not fully fit, so we'll see. But I think over the season, yeah, Eight Nori has that left back spot, which then just puts Gvardiol center. Yeah, and I think it's going to be. I can't imagine a Gvardiol Stones partnership personally. I just don't quite see them working side by side. So I think it could be Gvardiol Diaz or then just back to Stones Diaz. I think those are what we're going to be seeing pretty consistently. And then at the right back, I'm Nunes at right back. I'm a fan of. I think putting the midfielder that's not good enough for the midfield into fullback has worked pretty consistently for Pep Guardiola at City. Normally it was at left back, but it has just simply worked. And I think Nunes is more athletic than any of the others that have kind of played in that position beforehand. So I'm still a Rico Lewis believer. I know that he's someone that has weirdly, the fan base has also turned on him, but he is someone that I think can still come in and provide a lot of structure and just simply retaining possession, recycling the ball around. I think it is absolutely vital. He can make late runs. His finishing is a little bit of a disaster, to be completely honest. But if he can just kind of calm down a little bit, he just feels like he always rushes. If he just calms down a little, I really do feel like he can be a very, very special player. Midfield, I'm in the same boat. I think it's absolutely going to be Rodri and Reinders. I think they are going to play most of the matches, as barring Rodri's fit. And then I feel like Bernardo is going to get a lot of minutes by being captain, and I don't know where to put him. So my guess is that Bernardo is going to be wide right, and then one of Foden or Cherky. I'm not saying that I'm a fan of it. I just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
he has the armband, and I think that's, if not, then maybe it's a midfield of Rodri, Bernardo, and maybe Reinders. But that is and Foden or Cherky is always one of them. Will, no matter what, always be on the pitch, no matter what. I feel like, and then it is going to be in this weird quasi 10 right side, and then on the left, I think it's going to be Doku. I still think it's going to be Doku. I think that having an overlapping fullback is going to make it even more difficult for like defenses. I mean, City so rarely would have overlapping fullbacks in the area, but that's because they would have, like, it'd be like De Bruyne that would be overlapping with whoever the right wing is, or something like that. So I'm curious to see how that all works out, but that's going to be my guess. Is it's going to be Doku on the right and obviously Holland through the middle. And I think it might be ugly at first. I really do think that these first few months it's going to be a struggle, and I think people need to remember that throughout almost all of these championship winning seasons, it's a struggle at first. The stop start nature of it makes it so incredibly difficult, but I think that it will work out. I do think City are going to push for titles. I really do think that this is a team that could push for the league title. I think it was such a crazy down year, and the fact that City won more matches than Arsenal, almost finished above Arsenal on the table, it there only needs to be a few tweaks in order for this City side to really compete for the title. And I absolutely do think that this City side is being, like, I guess, overlooked to a incredibly high degree.
I was going to say the underrating that I've seen from the traditional media. Obviously, if you get into the people who more so really study the tactics and the squad build outs and stuff, you're going to see more nuanced takes. But from the traditional media, I'm seeing us fourth, fifth, things like that. And I just, there's no world where I see that. The problems from last season are gone in terms of there was no players that we felt comfortable putting on the pitch in a lot of these positions. You know, in midfield, we had no dual winners. In defense, we had so many injuries at the back. Now we're overstacked in these spots. And even up front, we've refreshed these players that weren't scoring goals for us. Now we have goal scorers and we have creators in these spots. So I honestly do feel like that we are, I would say we're the favorites for the title, but obviously Liverpool have done really good this summer as well. So we'll have to see with that one. But like you said, I think that people need to temper their expectations probably in the beginning if they're very high, because Obviously, it always takes us time to build in, and we always have these weird matches where we'll drop points to a team that there's no reason to drop points with for either the players didn't perform or Pep rolled out something really weird tactically for 3 quarters of the match or something like that. So yeah, I think that the outlook is overall good, but people need to keep their feet on the ground for sure with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was while like prepping for this episode, I was like looking back at all the past title winning seasons. City drop points in about 10 matches. So if you look back and no matter what is essentially 10 matches, they drop points. That's that magic number. Anything less than that, City are walking away with the title. Anything more than that is when you really start to allow any other elite team to win. It's kind of in that like 90 to like 93 point range, minus the whatever it was 2021 season where I think City won on like 86 points or something around that.
Hmm.
And I think the feeling for me is it feels so much like that 2021 side where everything felt like a mess, and I don't know who's going to be that Ruben Diaz type signing where it's just like the moment they walk in, everything changes. I don't expect Reinders to have that kind of effect, but he's the only person that I think of where it's a signing that just immediately walks into the team and makes a difference. And I don't know that's when Pep introduced the false nine. I don't know what that next kind of change is going to be. Maybe it's that with, Pep Linders coming in, City are now a much more transitional based team. It's weird to think a return to 17-18 type of play could happen, but Pep's adaptive and has adapted, and I think that is a thing of where I really do have massive expectations for this team because the entire defense is not going to get hurt again. We're not going to have Diaz, Stones, Ake, Akanji all hurt, somehow kind of playing, like it just being an absolute comical level of disaster. That's just not going to happen again. And if it does, there's a curse. And we have much bigger like deals, like much bigger issues are at play, and we need to kind of get to the bottom of that. So
I
yeah,
I
I'm
see the
excited.
I see the comparison between those 2 seasons, as you said. This is a team that was embarrassed last season, as they were in 1920. They were embarrassed. This is a lot of top players that were not playing at a top level, and I think that that type of rebound comes from people whose mentality completely switches in a moment like that. And I think that we've already seen it a little bit this season in terms of how guys are just talking about this season. It's a lot less of last season. It was a lot of, oh, well, let's see if we can do it again. Oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep it going and stuff like that. There's been none of that this season. It's time to give the fans back what they were missing last season. Like that has been the overall message that I've gotten from the Bernardo quotes the other day and stuff like that. So I really do think that the mentality shift is what was so sorely missed. So yeah.
Fantastic. Love it. All right, last thing to talk about is Wolves. So I mean, look, I think I was nervous at first with Wolves as the first match because I think they really easily fell under the radar last season. They were phenomenal is an aggressive word. They were really good for like the mid third stretch of that, like the last third of the season. They were honestly pretty phenomenal. Vitor Pereira, quite literally, there are videos of him like going into pubs in Wolverhampton and just like being able to just a king. This is someone that Gary O'Neill had ran them essentially into the ground. They were winless through the first 10 games. I think they had 9 points throughout the first half of the season before Vitor Pereira kind of was brought in. But I'm curious to kind of see what you think about this team, and do you think that this is something where is this like one of the typical City come in, absolutely dominate, make a statement, or are we potentially a banana slip first game of the season?
This is the type of game that concerns me, to be honest. This is a team with a lot of new players in a new league to where we don't have a lot of tape on them, to where Pep is going to have to get a feel for them in match and make adjustments in match. And that doesn't even mention our changes, as you mentioned with Pep Linders, in terms of the way that we're playing in our style and how we're going to figure this out in our first real competitive match since the new season. I guess you could consider the Club World Cup, but that was on such short notice. I don't know if it's going to be the same way of betting in as this will be, along with the fact that they're most likely going to play a lower block, and we're going to have to figure something out with these new pieces. We're going to be in problem solving mode where we haven't established the way that we want to solve problems yet. So it screams 1-1 late equalizer to Wolves on the counter or something to me. That's the type of, match. Every match that we seem to play away at Nottingham Forest is similar, like that type of match, where it just
Yeah.
really sneaks up on you late. So, yeah, I would be
Chris Wood
concerned about it.
nightmares.
Literally. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I think my only and I was legitimately nervous, and it's just looking at the amount of talent they've lost between Cunha, Aït-Nouri, and Semedo. Those are like 3 of their top 5 minutes players, and then Gonzalo Guedes, who he was someone that had a decent amount of time for them. I don't think he's that much of a a player that will be missed. And then Sarabia is just racking up. I mean, this guy I feel like has played for every team in Europe at this point. He's just kind of bouncing around all over. And then Craig Dawson, who wasn't really that much of a key player this year, but had been a pretty steady center back for him. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know if these new players are going to be that much of a difference maker, especially on the first kind of match of the season. But yeah, I think that this is going to be, personally, if I had to guess, I think City are going to come out really strong, because I just feel like normally first game of the season, always, even during the Pellegrini years, like they would just be like, honestly, they usually kind of have that first match. It does feel normally that City just do play very well, and I think the problems then come a little bit later. So I'm going to go with a 4-1. Defense isn't good enough to not hold anything back, but I think City are going to go with a 4-1. That's going to be my prediction.
I would be very happy with that. Especially if the right players score goals, I would be very excited with that. So, yeah, definitely.
A Foden brace.
Hey, you would never hear the end of it. The fingers are already going. I'm already typing right now. So it's good.
Alrighty, I think that's it. I don't really know if I have anything else to chat about. First, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you willing to come on camera and show the face. It means a lot. A massive thank you to Freddie and Jordan as well for kind of letting me come back and start this up again over at City Extra. I'm glad to be back. I know that some people don't love the fact that there's Americans that are doing this, but I am so glad for the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much. And yeah, this is Monday Morning Manager. Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you.